Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So Cursor, a 4-year-old startup founded by 4 MIT graduates, was days away from closing the biggest funding round of its existence, $2 billion. Andreessen Horowitz co-leading, Nvidia in the round, Thrive Capital. The paperwork was basically done, then Elon Musk called. On April 21st, SpaceX announced it had struck a deal with Cursor, the AI coding tool built by Anysphere, giving SpaceX the option to acquire the entire company for $60 billion later this year, or, if things don't work out, pay $10 billion just for the collaboration. The New York Times published a story hours before the announcement saying the acquisition was already done at $50 billion. SpaceX posted on X to correct the record, and the Times updated their story. That is how fast this moved. The $2 billion funding round, dead. Investors who had been weeks away from closing a deal were out. Here is what the deal actually is. SpaceX is not buying Cursor today. They are paying $10 billion to work together, pairing Cursor's AI coding product with SpaceX's Colossus supercomputer cluster in Mississippi and Tennessee, which runs the equivalent of 1 million Nvidia H100 GPUs. The goal, as SpaceX put it, is to build the world's most useful models for coding and knowledge work. If that goes well, SpaceX retains the right to acquire Cursor outright for $60 billion. Sometime before the end of this year. If it goes badly, Cursor walks away with $10 billion in its pocket. PitchBook called it the largest breakup fee in history, in the scenario where the acquisition never happens. Cursor CEO Michael Truell posted on X that he was excited to partner with SpaceX to scale up Composer, referring to Cursor's own proprietary agentic coding model. What he did not post was quite as interesting as what he did. No mention of the $2 billion round that just evaporated. No mention of why the timing was so sudden. Just forward-looking excitement from a 25-year-old CEO who, if this works out, will have built a $60 billion company in under 4 years. Now, on the surface, you could read this as a straightforward win for everyone. Cursor gets compute it desperately needed. SpaceX gets AI coding credibility ahead of its IPO. Investors who were about to put in $2 billion get nothing, but that is their problem. So why does this feel like a more complicated story than it looks? Because Cursor was bleeding. The company had revenue of over $2 billion annualized, more than 1 million daily active users, and 150 million lines of enterprise code generated daily. Those are extraordinary numbers. But behind them, the unit economics were quietly brutal. Cursor resells access to Claude models from Anthropic and GPT models from OpenAI at retail rates, while those same companies are building and subsidizing their own competing products. Anthropic's Claude Code had a $2.5 billion revenue run rate and 300,000 business customers. OpenAI's Codex was gaining fast. Cursor was paying its competitors to power its product while those competitors undercut its pricing to win its customers. One startup that was spending heavily on Cursor swapped 3 junior developers earning $450,000 a year for a $240 Cursor Pro subscription. The math worked for the startup. The math was getting harder for Cursor. Cursor's own blog post announcing the SpaceX deal was unusually candid about the underlying crisis. They wrote that they had wanted to push our training efforts much further, but we've been bottlenecked by compute. That is a startup saying, in the most polite possible terms, that they cannot afford to keep up. The $2 billion raise would not have gotten them to profitability. It would have bought time. SpaceX is not buying time. SpaceX is buying the compute problem away entirely, at least for now. And the compute problem is not unique to Cursor. The entire AI coding market is consolidating around whoever controls the infrastructure. AI coding tools generated $12.8 billion in revenue industry-wide in 2026, more than double the $5.1 billion in 2024. Over 50% of all GitHub code is now AI-generated or AI-assisted. The market is enormous and growing fast. But the economics at the model layer are brutal for any company that does not own its own training stack. Cursor's $200 per month Pro plan burns through roughly $5,000 in compute costs for heavy users, heavily subsidized, according to analysts who have modeled the unit economics. That is not a business. That is a land grab, and land grabs need someone willing to fund the losses. Without Colossus behind it, Cursor was running out of road. And here is where the story gets complicated in a different direction. When SpaceX acquires Cursor, it inherits something that may not survive the acquisition intact. Cursor's product is built on top of Claude and GPT. Anthropic and OpenAI have both signed zero data retention deals with Cursor, meaning customer code processed through Cursor stays private. The moment SpaceX, Musk's company and a direct AI rival to both Anthropic and OpenAI, becomes the owner, those agreements are likely to be renegotiated or cancelled entirely. InfoWorld analyst Sridhar Giri flagged this directly. If Cursor loses model access from Anthropic and OpenAI post-acquisition, the product essentially breaks. xAI's Grok, the model Cursor would presumably fall back on, currently ranks well behind Claude Code and Codex on every real-world coding benchmark that matters. The acquisition timing is also not accidental. SpaceX is delaying the full purchase until after its IPO this summer, which is targeting a valuation between $1.75 and $1.8 trillion, potentially the largest in history. The reason is mechanical. Buying Cursor now would force SpaceX to update its confidential IPO financial filings. Waiting until after the listing means the $60 billion purchase can be financed with newly public stock. It also means that announcing the Cursor deal right now, weeks before the IPO, lets SpaceX position itself in the roadshow as an AI company, not just a rocket and satellite business. Wall Street values AI companies at dramatically higher multiples than aerospace companies. The Cursor deal is doing a lot of work that has nothing to do with coding tools. PitchBook's Q2 analyst note on the deal put the tension plainly. SpaceX is already targeting a valuation of roughly 125 times its 2025 revenue. xAI spent $13 billion on chips and data centers in 2025 alone, and projects it will remain unprofitable until at least 2029. Now SpaceX is layering a commitment of between $10 billion and $60 billion on top of that. The question they raised for investors was direct. How much of SpaceX's valuation is actually the launch business, which generates reliable cash, and how much is the AI narrative, which is burning it? The Cursor deal is central to that narrative, which means Cursor's success or failure over the next 6 months will be priced into the largest IPO in history. There is a real question underneath all of it. Fortune's cover story on Cursor from March laid out the competitive landscape clearly. 6 developers and founders interviewed for the piece all said the same thing. They use Cursor for interactive visual coding in the IDE and Claude Code for anything requiring deep reasoning across a large code base. The two tools serve different needs. The market is not winner-take-all, but that comfortable multi-tool reality only holds while Cursor can access the models that make it competitive. If SpaceX closes the acquisition and Anthropic walks, that middle ground disappears fast. Zach Lloyd, CEO of Warp, a coding competitor, framed the industry shift that makes all of this make sense. I don't believe the Cursor is dead memes, but the IDE is dead is real. That's just not how software is being built now. The developers who matter most, the ones building at the frontier, are not living in visual editors anymore. They are running agents, and the agent race is exactly where Cursor has been weakest, and exactly what SpaceX is betting $10 billion that Colossus can fix. Cursor went from a $400 million valuation in 2024 to being the target of a $60 billion acquisition option in April 2026. That is not a story about a product. It is a story about compute scarcity, about what happens when the tools a company depends on are owned by its competitors, and about how an IPO roadshow can reshape a deal that looks like it is about AI but is actually about valuation multiples. SpaceX needed Cursor to look like an AI company before it goes public. Cursor needed compute it could not afford. Whether those two needs produce something that actually works for developers is the question nobody in this deal is primarily focused on answering. Thanks for watching. This is AI Tides, and I'll see you in the next one.